Welcome to Health Business Mastery, the Creative Thirst podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Hewitt. Hey, so I'm welcoming Vin back to this episode where we're going to talk about label packaging and the impact that they have on revenue for supplements. So Vin, welcome back to another episode of Health Business Mastery.
Bobby, it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Fantastic. So we all know that labeling is important, right? As soon as we see a product, we make certain distinctions about it psychologically, the quality of the product, everything from the quality to really, is it for me? And supplements are kind of very tricky to get right, and also very limited in space because you have requirements from the FDA that you have to have on the labels. Plus the size of the actual label itself, it's pretty small compared to the amount of things that you need to get on it. And you can go really, really bad and have labels that are not only ugly, but kind of turn people away. You can have other labels that are an exact match, for your audience and your market. Let's discuss that.
Absolutely. Certainly, you bring up a good point in the sense that when you go to a good restaurant, right, and a plate comes out and it's beautifully presented, they say, we eat with our eyes a lot, or at least a lot of chefs say that, right? That the process starts by, if it's visually appealing, how that triggers a sense of excitement, right, about what you're about to consume. And certainly in the land of supplementation, supplement and branding, the same holds true. Right. And it's interesting, and we can kind of go through this as we talk, but there has certainly been an evolution in the space, based on, as time goes on and as years pass, what is appealing and what the consumer is looking for. So there's a lot of different places that the industry has gone. You can make the argument some of it was really, really cool, and some of it was really innovative, and some of it was certainly a scratch your head. How did that stuff ever sell kind of mentality? So, but there certainly is a lot of different topics within the topic that I'm looking forward to discussing.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess it really kind of also goes back to your market and who you're selling to, right?
Right.
55 plus woman is going to be very different than selling to a pre-workout guy at the gym, who's looking for that, maybe that shinier label or that black label.
Right.
Silver labels were popular for a little while.
Yeah, that was the interesting thing that I could say over the 20 years that I've been in the industry, how certain concepts hold true and how certain ones have really gone completely gone away. And you bring up a good one in the sense that how the sports nutrition space specifically has kind of evolved over the last 5 years, if you want to say. If you go back to like 2010, 2009, it was big, it was bold, it was yellow, it was shiny, it was that real glamorous feel. Everything was to be as big and bold as possible. And when you think about today, one of the concepts that it's important for brand owners to recognize is that the world is a crowded place, both mentally, physically, and what's really seemed to be appealing lately is the concept of minimalistic design, muted with complementary colors, simple fonts. Consumers in almost every segment really seem to be gravitating towards clean look, right? And I think that that's something that supplement brand owners really should think, how does that general concept apply to the niche that you're looking to target? So I think that's an important one to as a base principle for today. That's one of them for sure.
100%. As the younger generation kind of gets into supplements and just more health awareness, their demands on products are completely different, right? They want a more sustainable product. They want more biocompostable products, biocompostable design, or a label that reflects that is going to be very, very different. But I think it's essentially going to come down to a very clean look and maybe different color palettes and different earth tones and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it seems as what we've seen is simplistic but meaningful, right? Simplistic but meaningful is good, solid advice when it comes to the front panel. That front panel, it shouldn't be crowded, right? A consumer should be able to pick up that box or that bottle or if it's a pouch or whatever it might be, and understand what they're getting themselves involved in. And what I mean by that is, if you're, there's a lot of buzzwords that there are things like gluten-free and vegan and recyclable paper. And, some of these real important areas that consumers are looking for. You want to make sure that in the most minimalistic way you can, you express that information. So a lot of brand owners that we do business with, they like to use icons, right? And there's, you can use the same icon across your entire brand if a product fits into a certain category, right? So real easy one, right? If there's a multivitamin and you actually have an eye product and there's an eye icon, right on the front. And it kind of gives that visual representation of what the product is for. It simplifies the decision-making process within the consumer's mind. And they know this is a product for my eye health, right? As a good example, not being so wordy. I've seen a lot of brands fail because they know the ingredients, they realize that the ingredients are great, and they get way too wordy with big scientific words on that front panel. And consumers are just looking to see, well, how does this connect to me and what I'm looking for? And I think when you talk specifically about that front panel, you want to make sure that message is clearly conveyed in a way that your niche needs to see it and be able to consume it.
How do you feel about using the logo on the label? So a lot of supplement owners think of their products as a whole line of products, right? And if it doesn't match and doesn't fit within the line, an easy out really is just using the logo on every single bottle. Mm-hmm. Personally, I feel that kind of hampers. Yeah, it looks great as when you line them all up, but it kind of hampers the decision factor of looking at the bottle and kind of getting what it does. Like you mentioned, having an image of an eye on there, if it's an eye health supplement, right? Having an image of, whatever, a joint support supplement. But if you go with the logo, it feels like you're not expressing the value of the product on that very limited real estate space.
I agree. I think that you bring up a good point about, hand-drawn 2D centric illustrations. Those are in right now. Text-centric designs, simple, less cluttered, playful copy colors. Those are the things that help a label or a box pop. And certainly you don't want to take up prime real estate with something that's not going to have impact. That's for sure. And you bring up a good point about how careful you are about that front panel, and the information and the imagery that you want to share there. For sure, it's important to plan that out well and realize that most likely the person that you're trying to appeal to has got a lot of choices to choose from. And being simplistic right now seems to be the best way to handle it, and to use that space properly.
So what are your thoughts on a line of supplements where they all kind of match, or you can tell they're all part of the family brand?
Right. So I have a little bit of experience here because in my former life, before I was at NutriScience, I was the chief operating officer of a direct-to-consumer brand that's still around today. Pretty proud of how well they've done and how well, how we grew that company. But it was interesting that when I started there, we were primarily advertising through radio and TV back then. And the packaging of the product, the labels, you would almost never know that they were a part of the same company. And that was just in the, in the entrepreneurial way that the business was started. There was a product category that the business wanted to go after, and they treated it almost as a separate entity in a lot of ways. And it was unique for the time, but as time went on, and I'm talking about the basically the 2000s, right? 2000 to 2009. And it's interesting how the back half of that decade, the company changed its mentality. And, we spent time with we spent time working on branding, right? Making sure that the company name, which had a certain style, certain font, certain little characteristics to it, we found a way to incorporate that onto the front panel of every single bottle, right? Seems simple enough, but you certainly, if you're gonna look to get your products on shelf, you want there to be a way that a client or a customer or a potential customer can see that products are related, that it is the same brand, and you want to have your core values of your business speak across all the different products that you're offering. Because if somebody trusts one of your products and you've gained their trust there, when they see something else, they're familiar with it. They understand it's the same company. They have an expectation of customer service and quality and all the things that were associated with the product that they are using. And now you have an opportunity to grow what that customer is consuming from you. So that's a big part of it for sure.
Absolutely, as well as packaging factors that affect cost and revenue, right? Like some supplements just come in the bottle. Other supplements come in the bottle, comes inside of a box, and
right.
Or even the form factor as well, right? Some require a dark glass, right, to protect the ingredients from deteriorating. Others are more convenient, already pre-measured powders that you can just cut, tear, and put into a glass and stir it out.
And certainly at NutriScience, we see a lot of great ideas that unfortunately the product just isn't going to be, it's not going to hold, right? It's not going to be sustainable. You're going to have, whether it's clumping issues or other types of concerns, some of the most beautiful ideas, unfortunately, they just can't be executed. So you have to think about your product formulation. You have to think about your product dose form, and really work with a contract manufacturer who has the experience to understand all of that and keep you away from making a bad decision. And that's just a big part of picking a manufacturer that knows what they're doing, has the experience, and is going to lead you in the best possible direction, while still understanding what your goals are from a marketing and a packaging standpoint, to be able to accomplish those goals as well. So there is a little bit of a give and play and a balance on what is possible and what you should do, right? So it's always interesting to keep the two things in mind. One of the things that I could tell you that we've seen recently that's pretty cool, and again, it goes back to there being a smarter consumer, and the consumer really is looking for quality, right? And they want to be able to, there are subtle nuances that can really help a brand elevate their image. And some of the things that we're seeing now is the concept of luxe feel. And what I mean by that is really innovative brand owners are coming out with a design that has different combinations of touch. So you might have a label that has gloss, matte, soft touch feels, all within the same concept, all within the same design. And when somebody picks that up off the shelf, or when they get it in their home from when they order it online, you just those different textures, right? Again, appealing to the senses. You got, you know, the eyes. Now you're talking about touching something that's got, you know, it might have embossing, or it might have a matte finish to it. And then there might be another area where there is a little bit of a shine to it. And it just kind of takes the customer back for a second and says, whoa, this is pretty cool, right? And if you can get a pretty cool reaction out of someone, I think you've done a good job of, you know, imprinting on their psyche a little bit.
100%, right? That perception really sticks to the quality of the product.
Right. And, you know, and I feel that, you know, you have that front panel when you're talking about boxes, or you're talking about labels, you know, there are other sides, right? And certainly one of the considerations is that you're going to have a panel, right, on your label that has to have directions and supplement facts, and also warnings, and, you know, your adverse event and your address information, and that sort of, you know, takes up one side. And then you have that left side, I like to call it. And that left side is really a space where we see successful brand owners try and get the emotional connection to the consumer. Whether, you know, and some brands have been really unique in how they go about that. You know, there might be an element of humor. There might be an element of, you know, a brand owner's story. You know, if someone, you know, is utilizing a product or has developed a product because of a health concern that they might have had. Obviously, an existing brand has a brand history to be able to share. So those are all different elements, you know, and thinking about how to utilize text in a creative way, because again, people are going to pick it up, they're going to look at it, but then they're also going to want to make, you know, you could peel back the onion a little bit on that left side. And again, it's valuable real estate. So planning that out properly and having it align to what the brand you want it to stand for, again, creates that consistency across different products, right? And we've seen brand owners do a really nice job with that of late.
So that's very interesting. Is there, like, I'm imagining it's mostly text. It's not done through imagery, because the space you're talking about on the left side is very limited.
Right. So there's text, right? But some, in terms of like design elements, you can carry, you know, as an example, maybe there's a subtle imagery that goes underneath your front panel, right? And how does that potentially pull into that left panel where it's not crowded, but there's like that subtle continuity of how it flows, right? You know, the best example I can give is maybe a flower, right? Or something along those lines, where it can start on the left panel and how you pull that through to the front, and how it connects the two, where it's not so the front panel and then there's the left panel, and then obviously the right panel plays its own role because it needs to, you know, you have your regulations and requirements that are necessary there. But we've seen that's a pretty cool way to tie the label together.
Yeah, it's like it reminds me of like a double page spread, right? You're carrying visually, you're carrying some element through so that they turn the bottle, right? In a double page spread, you're just going from left to right, but in this case, we're going from center to left.
Right.
The reason to turn that bottle counterclockwise to take a look at that. So
we, you know, those are some elements that we've seen, and they do they make a difference. You know, those little subtle nuances when it comes to label and packaging design, where you can connect to the senses. We've really that's so important. There's no other word for it. It's just so important to be able to do that.
Any innovations as far as color goes? I know we talked about sort of what reminds me of like the 90s, right? Those yellow, bold, silver, right? Everything is so limited, and the supplement bottles are all just generally white, right? Any innovations you're seeing on color?
That's a good question. As far as color goes, I feel like copy color has been more playful of late, as opposed to just plain white, right? Or plain black. You know, I think playing the white space against you know, the active space, for a lack of a better word, those sort of things have taken, you know, hold of late. And again, you know, the muted complementary colors to the minimalistic design, that seems to be what is sparking interest these days. And I think being able to work with a designer who's able to understand those elements speak to the marketplace, I think. And in that creative design, how do you use of color help you to stand out if you're on a shelf, or if it's a product image online? Years ago, my old CEO loved the color yellow. It was actually comical, since I was helping manage the graphic design and the production standpoint at that point. And when we showed a label for approval, or there was anything, our old CEO would, let's get some yellow in there someplace, right? And again, it's an easy example, but in his mind, yellow pops, right? It comes out at you, it speaks to you, and it kind of from what our label was, it broke it up, right? And it whatever that key point was, he wanted to see it, in a yellow background. So I don't know if I agree with that, especially today. As I said earlier, I think we've moved away from that, as seen on TV, sort of like bubbling type thing. I think there needs to be more of an emotional, simplistic coolness about a package, more than some of that, for a lack of a better word, used car salesman type strategies.
Anybody using like QR codes to kind of expand the story?
We see it, and I think that I think QR codes are certainly not going away. I think they're probably only going to get a little bit more advanced as we go. I think it's a good idea for a brand owner to think about that, to learn more, right? And it's so routine now, right? You see it everywhere. You could be watching, the World Series, and next thing you know, there's a QR code that pops up, right? And something is, going on, whether it's buy merchandise or whatever. So I think that we see it. We tend to see QR codes if you have like a box. We tend to see it sometimes on the top, or we tend to see it on the back panel on a box. And usually we see QR codes more on a bottle that goes in a box, as opposed to just on a label. Again, space, right? It's all about priority and what the brand is trying to achieve. So, but it's there for sure, and that gives you cool options, right? You can have a video there. You can have other ways of interacting with a potential client. Especially if they're standing in the store and there's a QR code staring at them, and you get a little bit more. Especially if you notice retail space, there aren't too many associates walking from years ago, right? So, how do you get that personal touch? That certainly is a cool way to think about it.
Absolutely, you could expand on the founder story. There's so much you can do,
right?
With the QR, you could expand on the ingredients, the quality, where it's sourced from. There's so much. It's an endless amount.
And when you talk about your label design, I do believe that part of that is also picking your packaging. And you brought it up a little bit earlier, but certainly being responsible from an environmental standpoint is something that people are just looking for, right? And I think that some of the things that we see is, a lot of companies are using for a powdered product, you see the stand-up bags, right, with the resealable tops. That for some reason that plays a little bit more functionally cool and plus environmentally responsible. That it's the material there is all recycled. You can do a lot of cool matte finishes with that and kind of give it like this real rustic kind of appeal that seems to be working really well. But again, it's, the trend is moving away from the big jugs, right? Years ago, the sports nutrition industry, it was like you had those big gainer bottles and, however many pounds of protein. And now brand owners are trying to be more subtle about how they package their product, how many servings are in a particular product, because that seems to be resonating with the consumer. The days of going to the gym with the massive, protein bottle in your car, I think those days are over, right? Or at least they've seemed to shift it a little bit.
The packaging is reflecting the marketing sensibilities of today's audience, is what it sounds like, right? Where you mentioned less car sales, meaning less yellow, if you will, right?
Right. Right.
So that's also being reflected in things like the actual, is it a bottle? Is it a bag? Does it have a box? Does it have a glass? Also in very interesting points of the serving size as well. So you're seeing, you say that's becoming more subtle. So, I mean, that's a requirement to have on a supplement bottle or package, right? But so it's what, smaller fonts?
Well, I think, no, what I think I meant by that was, the consumers will actually, it seems, they will actually pay, they're okay with purchasing something with less servings per container, if all the other elements are there. You have an environmentally conscious design. Obviously, the product has to have quality behind it. And it seems as if it's not about, well, let me get the 10-pound jug. I'll buy the 20 serving protein powder, and I'm happy doing that because of all these other factors. It's a cool looking package. It's a pouch instead of a bottle. It's easy to reseal it. All of those different elements that kind of play into it. And we see that a lot. Actually, with some of the brands right now that are doing really well, we do a lot of pouch and standing bag, gusset bag filling. That seems to be a trend right now that's hot because we do a lot of it right now. So
is that for a particular demographic age group, or is that across the board?
I think it's pretty across the board, up until you get to like the boomers, right? I think the boomers are still their own an entity onto themselves. Some of the younger boomers are starting to gravitate towards some of the new stuff, but certainly, Gen Z, Gen X, the millennials, so that's anyone 50 and under, right? Pretty much. I feel like it's all kind of coming together that they want that less, I think overproduction in anything right now is frowned upon. I think people are looking for that realistic emotional connection, and they feel that, I think that there's a connection to simplistic and minimalistic design to that real psychological connection to the brand. So and I think that's the reason why those things are selling better.
I wonder if they think of it as being less overproduced.
Right.
Yeah.
There's the element of clean again, right? Not a lot of ingredients, not a lot of words on this label, not a lot of over design. That means it's being put together in a small crafted kind of way, right? That gives people comfort. That gives people a feeling of, all right, this is a brand that I want to be associated with. And there's a trust factor there as a result.
Right. And there's elasticity in the price, at least in that younger demo, where they're willing to pay a little more for it.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. So as they age up, as we talked about before, right, that will be interesting over time to see if that stays,
right,
or if they flip back to the traditional boomer sensibilities.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, just in conclusion, I think it's an important element. When you think about you're entering this space, there's a lot of competition, and one of the ways that you can certainly differentiate yourself is in your packaging and in your creativity. But as you develop that, you want to keep certain trends in mind. And, just to quickly, recap what we're seeing, those luxe feels where you can do things with gloss and matte and soft touch all on the same label, having the minimalistic design elements with more of a muted color palette, simple fonts, 2D centric illustrations, giving that sense of smallness, but being of quality, I think is probably the best way to tie a bow around the topic for sure.
There's so much we can go down, but let's leave it there, because there's so much that you can go down around design. And I mean, you mentioned a few, right? Your form factor and your dosage really limits what packaging you can and can't do, or should and shouldn't do, in realistically.
Right. Absolutely.
And I mean, NutriScience is right there with a full design team to help you come up with any kind of design that you want. You guys hold their hands, and tell me a little bit more about.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the last 15 years, NutriScience really has prided itself on being the brand owner, the brands that are new and emerging. That's who we pride ourselves on servicing. And part of that is being a one-stop shop where there's formulation, contract manufacturing support, but then there's also label and packaging design. And our art director has been doing this for 15 years. He's seen it all, and what we really try and do is we try and handhold through the process, really bring to life the vision that a brand owner has, and also being a voice of reason when necessary. And I think that's an important element. You want to work with somebody who's been down the road and can, even though it might not be what you want to hear, you probably need to hear it. And we pride ourselves on being a voice of reason, but also being a source of creativity to help bring that vision to life. And then the fact that we're the ones that are going to design it, we'll get those labels printed and then ultimately onto your products. So it does take a lot of the management end of things out of it, because you're really going to be speaking to one person, one shop, to be able to get all that completed.
Yeah, and you guys know best what's working in the market right now and what's working for different supplement markets and different demographics.
Absolutely.
Vin, there's no better place for people to go if they want a top-notch design on their supplement than NutriScience.
That's for sure. We certainly do pride ourselves on providing A-class customer service every step of the way. So, yeah, it's always great to talk to you, Bobby.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Vin.
All right, you got it.
Creative Thirst is a direct response digital agency focusing on conversion rate optimization and A/B testing. We work with dietary supplement companies who are struggling to maximize the profitability of their funnels so they can scale. Through the last 7 years in the online health space, we've optimized many dietary supplement businesses. And in that time, we've uncovered the 3 critical funnels for success. We put together that information in a free digital download called The 3 Funnels Every Health Supplement Business Needs to Build a Multi-million-dollar Empire. You can get that free report by going to creativethirst.com. Scroll down to the appropriate section and click on the blue Get Your ebook button.